So the outlier represents, it doesn't actually give you a true representation of your data. So there's 6, for example, one student had 6 and another student had 0. Okay, that can affect your mean. Let's try an example, right? So imagine, for example, in our data we had 1, 3, 4, 5, and then 10. Okay, let's say that was the amount of siblings per person. So the first student had 1 sibling, second student had 3 siblings, third student had 3 siblings, so on and so forth. So what happens when you add them all up? What would that equal to if you add up all these amount of siblings?
Are you asking for the number figure or is it like a different word?
The number figure. So if you add up the amount of siblings, how many does that equal to? 27.
Is it 26?
So 10, 5, 15, 19, 22, 25, 26. And then how many students do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what is the actual average in this? 26 divided by 6. What's that equal to approximately?
5.7.
5 point?
Something.
But I don't have 5 siblings.
5.1, exactly. So what happens is the outlier has an effect on our mean. Have a look at this, right? Let's say, for example, I take this out of the equation, right? Now, what's the average now? 5 plus 4, 9, 12. What's that equal to now? So that is when there's 10 in there, right? What happens when we take the actual 10 out? So you got 5 plus 4, 9, 12, 15, 16. Well done. How many sets of data do we have here? How many students do we have in the class here? 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what's 16 divided by 5? 3. 3 point something. Yeah, let's go with 2. I don't know the exact figure. But as you can see here, the mean doesn't normally, it gives you an actual information about the normal distribution of the data, right? What does that mean? It means basically a general information about the data, okay? But it's sometimes the outliers can have an effect on your actual average, okay? Now, median is actually your middle number, okay? It's your middle score. So it's whatever that's in the middle. So in here, in this data set here, what's the actual median for this data set here?
3.5.
3.5. So how did you find out the middle, Sim?
Because there's 6 numbers, so it can't be 3 or 4, so it's a number in between.
Right. And that's the problem about the median. Not all the time is it the middle number. And you just made that point. So in this situation, how we find that out, we just go 1, 2, and then it's in between this. And what are you going to find out here to find out the median? You do the average of these two numbers, what you just said. So 3 plus 4 divided by 2, which is 3.5. So the median is actually 3.5. Well done, okay? So the median is actually 3.5. That's your middle number. Okay? The mode is talking about the most common. Okay? So which is the most common? 3. So the amount of siblings is going to be 3. Okay? 3 siblings is the most frequent amount of siblings there are in this set of data. So where would you use a mode, Zara, in real life? Where would you use a mode? Where would you use a mode? Like for example, right? When you vote for the best goal kicker of the year, or for example, because I know Sam Draper, he went up for the best goal kicker of the year, okay? Now, what's going to be taken into consideration? What's going to be taken into consideration?
Yeah, 100%.
Sarah. How do we collect that data? How does AFL collect that data? Sorry. Seeing how many. So what are they collecting? Starts with the letter V. Votes.
Valeria.
Okay. So not Valeria. So we're collecting votes, right? Now, in this situation, when you have another thing when you turn 18, you'll get to have the chance to vote, right? Now, that data that they collected, can you take an average?
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, an opposition minister and the prime minister are the ones that are competing against each other for the vote, right? Now, can you take an average between, let's say, for example, John Howard and Julia Gillard? Can you take an average between them? Can you take an average between those two people? Because mean is the average, yeah? Mean is the average, okay? So can you take a mean for example, the votes between Julia Gillard and, let's say, for example, John Howard? Can you take an average between the two people? Not really, right? You can't take an average of characteristics.
Exact.
Yeah, so which one would you take? This one?
Most common.
Yes, correct. That's how you collect the data. So for example, when, let's say John Howard wins the election, that means he had the most frequent what? Votes. Well done. Good point. So that's where your mode comes into play. Okay? You can't actually take an average for nominal data because it's names, right? You're dealing with names. So here, so in that situation, yeah, so you've got your mean, median, and mode, and that measures your central tendency. So it's a ways to measure your central tendency. Okay? So what is a central tendency? What does that even mean?
No.
What does that term central tendency mean?
Well, tendency is what you keep doing. Like it's something that's repeated. And central is like middle. So middle thing you keep
Yeah.
doing.
So where the tendency for the results or your data tend to be. So for example, if I was to collect data like we did last week, the tendency for the central data, it's like, okay, let's say we collected all the heights of everyone. Where does the central tendency lie? So for example, what's the most common height? Let's say we calculated it amongst like, let's say 5 foot, 6 foot, 7 foot, 8 foot, right? Then you can find out the mean. What's the average, right? You can find out the average height. These are all different measures. These are 3 different ways you can measure your actual data, right? And they give you information about the actual population, all right? So, so what's the central group like, essentially? What's the central group like, okay? And then, yeah, we'll just be going over that a bit more, but I'll go through a better explanation later on. But yeah, what I want you guys to do is have a go at that worksheet that I just gave. So you're finding out the mean, median, and mode. These are all different ways you can measure your central tendency. Okay, where does your data tend to lie? Okay, for example, for mode, most common, you got your median, which is generally your middle number. Okay, now the other question is, does your outlier affect your median? Does your outlier affect your median?
Yes.
Okay, let's have a go, right? So let's say, for example, you had 1, 3, 3, 5, 6, and then you had 15. Let's say you had 5 as well, and then you had 6, right? Now, okay, let's say you had 15. Okay, so let's find out your median. Okay, what is the median again? What does it sound like? What does your median sound like? Middle. Well done. Okay, good memory. Median, middle. Yeah, literally. So, what is your middle number, Kenzie? 5. How did you do that? You could do bang, bang, bob. So literally, you're 5. Okay? Now, does this number have any effect on that median, middle number?
Yes.
Does it? The middle number still stays the middle number, doesn't it?
No, but if that number wasn't there.
Let's say, for example, yeah, I'll give you a good example of this. So a good example is, if I had a company, yeah, I was a CEO of a company. Let's say I was a CEO of FIFA, right? Okay, so let's say all my employees get paid, for example, let's say 15,000, let's say, for example, $45,000, $45,000, and then you got $60,000. And then let's say, for example, me, because I'm the CEO, I get paid $100,000. Okay. Now, if you were to take an average of that, what would be the average of this information here? What would be the average? How do you calculate the mean? How do you calculate the mean? Does anyone know? Let's say these are the people that worked in my company, including myself, right? What is the mean? Does anyone know? Yes.
You add up all the numbers.
Yeah, you add them all up.
Before.
What are these called? What scores are they called? Dollars, right? Amounts, yeah? So amount of payments, yeah? Add up payments. Yep, and then what do you do then?
Then you divide it by the number of payments you have.
Yep, number of, okay, well, who do they represent?
Wages, the people who's getting.
Yes, number of employees, okay? Okay, now, if you add up all these payments, is anyone who calculated that amount? 90, 150, 250K, right? Okay, so that's $250,000, and you divide it by the number of employees. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, what is the average there? What's the mean? What's the mean amount there? Does anyone know the mean amount? 250 divided by 4.
62,500.
What is it?
62,500.
62,500. So on average, this is how much on average people get paid in my company, right? So you can see that actually is not a true representation of the company, right? So let's say, for example, all of a sudden, what's your median for this part here? What's your median for these scores?
50,000.
So median is what?
Is middle number.
Is the middle number. So let's find that out. 1, 2. Okay, we don't exactly have a middle number, right? What do we do to find out that middle number? And you did it before. Does anyone remember what he just said before? So the middle number is these two. It's in between these two. How do you calculate that?
60, what is it, 60 plus?
Yeah, it's between these two.
Yeah, 60 plus 4, 500.
Yeah,
Divided by 2.
So 60,000 plus 45,000 divided by 2. And what do you have there? So what is that? 105,000 divided by 2. What's 105,000 divided by 2? What's that equal to?
52.5.
52.5?
Yeah.
You're right. Hold on. 52,500. So that's the middle number. Okay. Let's say, for example, right now, I decided 1 year later, I decided, you know what? We're earning so much money as a company. So I'm going to pay myself. So that's the median number, isn't it? Yep. Now, for example, I decide 2 years later, yeah, I want to get paid $300,000. Okay, because I'm like, oh, my company's doing so well. And because I'm not a nice person, I don't increase other people's payments, their salaries. Does the middle number change now?
Yeah.
No.
No. Well done. The middle number does not change. Have a look at that. The middle number still stays the same. The median doesn't change. Guys, notice that point. If you change the outlier, the median doesn't change, right? Okay, if I was to work out the average, the mean, does it change, Riley?
Yes.
Does the mean change? Yes. So that's why it's really important. The disadvantage about a mean to take an average is that it gets affected by these outliers. For example, in the what we did that activity the other day, we had some people that had 6, some people that had 0. That affects our average. Because what did we work out here? 3 siblings, right? No, somewhere here, 1 sibling, right? Okay? But that doesn't take into effect the people that had 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth. So the disadvantage about the mean is that it gets affected by the outliers. Okay? So if we were to take the results of this class out of 100, and we got someone who got 100 out of 100, in their test, right? That skews up the average of the grade to a higher amount. Yeah? So that it's really hard to compare the average of the class, especially when there is outliers that affect the results, okay? So that's for you to think about it in a broader sense. How is it applied? They use this in everyday life, okay? Kira? They use this in everyday life, like footy, they take data. Wherever you go in your day-to-day life, they take this information, okay? And then they present it. So you got to be careful as to how you analyze your data and what you interpret, yeah? So you can see here, guys, the mean, the average is affected by my payment, but the median is not affected, okay? What's the disadvantage about a median? Let's say, for example, there's 1,000 employees I have in my company. What's the disadvantage about finding out the median? Does anyone know how you find the median? What's the set rules to find out the median? Find the middle number, but you've got to do something before that. Yeah, but before that, you're close. You've got to put the numbers in order from smallest to highest. So if you have 1,000 employees, what do you think will happen?
It's going to be a pain in the butt to...
You're right, well done. Why is it going to be a pain? Because you've got to take so much time putting this amount of data in order from smallest to largest. So that's the disadvantage about finding out the mean. It takes a long time. So what I want you guys to do is have a go at those questions.